Okay, so it is March 10th, and this is what we're doing. So here we go. Everybody ready? Okay. So let's see. Okay, let's talk a little bit in general about vaccines. So vaccination is one of the major success stories of modern medicine. Many of you know all this. Actually, there's an old story about plumbers have done as much for public health as physicians have, and because of the sanitation and people not getting disease. Well, a lot of the stuff physicians have done have to do with vaccination, and it's greatly reduced the incidence of infectious diseases over the ages, maybe the last 100 years or so, 150 years, such as measles and other diseases such as smallpox. We don't have smallpox anymore because of vaccination. So what they basically do is vaccines prepare the immune system to fight infections and prevent the illness that are caused by them. So there are certain cells in our immune system that produce antibodies, which are special proteins. These antibodies recognize pathogens. They recognize things that cause disease, and the antibodies attach to the thing that causes the disease and inactivates them, makes them unable to cause disease. Conventional vaccine approaches are really difficult up to now against rapidly evolving pathogens. Influenza changes every year, so that's tough. Or emerging disease threats such as Ebola or Zika virus. Remember Zika? It's still out there. So conventional approaches, it took a very long time to develop vaccines that we could use effectively, rapidly. So now, as you all know, we do have COVID-19 vaccines available, and these are actually technically called SARS-CoV-2 vaccines. That's because there's a SARS-CoV-1 out there, a virus. It's still out there. It's what we all commonly refer to as SARS. Remember the SARS disease, the SARS outbreak? We had about 30 cases in the United States at one point. And that's really when the research started. It's actually over 15 years ago. It seems to me like it was just recently, but 15 years ago, SARS was a threat to the world and a threat of becoming a pandemic. Mitigation factors kept us from getting it, kept us from allowing it to become a pandemic, which was lucky. Everybody sat around after that in science and said, maybe we ought to do something about this and try to develop a vaccine against SARS-CoV-1, because there's going to be other SARS coming. They did know that there would be a 2 and a 3 at that point, or at least they postulated it would be. So they started the research then on it. So now, based on that stuff that started back then, we have 2 types of vaccines now available. We have so-called mRNA vaccines and so-called traditional adenovirus vector vaccines. So a more traditional platform to have the effectiveness. mRNA vaccines are significant for this group, particularly today, because the Moderna vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. So all 3 of these vaccines, as you probably all well know, are available under an FDA emergency use authorization. Now, to get this, approval was required from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, from VRBPAC, which is the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, and then the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is actually a big deal. That's a big, important committee that meets in the United States, of course, and they actually have international branches. But this is the group that tells us that the DPT vaccine should be given at 2 and 4 months, for instance. They make all this scientific recommendations, these scientific recommendations. And then the FDA actually goes after that, gets the 3 approvals, and decides whether or not they're going to authorize that.
Because our plan was like.
So, hey, everybody, if we could ask you to mute, everybody mute, please. because there's some background noise and everybody can hear it. So anyway, the general principles of using vaccines are to decrease individual risk, to create herd immunity, right? Herd immunity is when enough people in a group, so this society, for instance, has immunity from vaccination. The disease has to die. It can't continue on. It doesn't have enough food to eat. So it does not thrive, it actually withers. We will tell you also that emergency use authorization vaccines and other medication are not mandatory to take. Certain places do, and certain governmental bodies mandate certain vaccines, not this one at this time. So here are the three types. The Moderna, most importantly for you guys, right up top, 2 doses, 28 days apart, takes an extra 14 days to get the full effect. It's excellent efficacy profile, really 94% against disease, any disease. That means even the sniffles. That means getting it at all. It's 100% protective against severe disease. We don't have data on hospitalization and death because it's 100% effective against severe disease. People do not progress to hospitalization and death once they've received the Moderna vaccine. By the way, this information comes, I really misspoke. This information comes from the studies on it prior to its authorization. So it's 94% in people studied and 100% in people studied. We've actually found that our experience with millions of people is that it's panning out this way, which is really good news. The other vaccines, the Pfizer, which is the German company also makes it. BioNTech is 2 doses in 21 days. Its full effect is also 14 days. The little cool thing about Pfizer is that 16-year-olds can take it, that cohort 16 to 18 can have it. At least we've studied it in them. Probably everybody can have these, but we didn't study it, so we can't say you can have it. 95 against any disease, 75 severe, 87% hospitalization, 84% death. So you can see that it does a tremendous job in cutting down morbidity and mortality to this disease. It really turns it into a bad cold. Then there's the Johnson & Johnson, which is labeled under the Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is actually a division of Johnson & Johnson. That's an adenovirus platform. It's 1 dose, and 14 days after that dose, you have full immunity. The any disease number for was not so good. The J&J was not so good. Any disease was 72%, was not as good. But it is good because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was studied in South Africa and in Brazil and in the United States during the time of variants. So you can't compare it to the other two. I happen to think that it's probably exactly as effective as the other two, but it had a tougher test than the other two that were done quite early before the variants were widespread. You see hospitalization and death are 100%. I think you'll find that for all three, it's going to be the hospitalization and death is going to be quite high.
That thing about vaccines.
Never say never. 100% is a scary number. It just never seems to pan out. The side effects of the 3 vaccines are similar. The Moderna and the Pfizer have a pretty similar, within the similarity, have even more similar side effect profile. Almost universally, you get pain at the injection site and swelling and some redness, up to 10% in redness. It's very similar to the tetanus immunization where almost everybody gets a sore arm. Systemic reactions, which are reactions that are whole body reactions where you will actually feel, not just at the injection site. A lot of people get fatigue. You can get headache, muscle pain. So you almost feel as though you're getting sick. And what this is this is the immune response reacting. It is not the disease. You're not getting a mini dose of COVID. Same thing happens with the flu shot. Everyone says incorrectly that, I think I got the flu from the flu. No, you didn't. It's your immune response. And immune responses are very nonspecific. It's the same for every disease. That's why so many diseases make you feel as though you're tired, have a headache, have muscle pain, joint pain, chills, nausea, vomiting, etc., and develop fever. Johnson & Johnson has much less reactions, but still quite a bit for many of the immunizations we take. Again, none of them significant. Let's just talk a little bit about the mRNA vaccines and how they work. mRNA vaccines work by introducing the protein sequence. So it's an mRNA, ribonucleic acid, messenger ribonucleic acid sequence into the cells. So what mRNA does is it tells the cells what to build, and it's coded for a particular disease-specific antigen. So what it's coded for is to create a protein that looks like the virus. It's actually a piece of the virus that the virus has on. It's like taking my jacket and using it to identify me. The mRNA does not integrate itself into the host genome. It not only does not, there's no mechanism for it to do so. We have messenger RNA running around in our blood all the time. When you eat a banana, you have messenger RNA from a banana in it, and you don't turn into a banana. It can't make its way into your genome because your genome's inside a thing called the nucleus, and it can't get through the door. It's a good thing. We're designed that way, because if we weren't designed that way, we'd be having all kinds of trouble every time we ate a piece of lettuce. We'd begin to get characteristics of lettuce. No, it doesn't work that way. So it doesn't integrate into the genome, and it actually in the process of it being transcribed, or it's actually transcribed just like you put a CD in a machine, and you hear the noise or the sound. It goes into a little machine that we all have called ribosomes, and it makes proteins. Once it goes into that machine, actually pieces of it are destroyed, so you can't play it twice. It's almost like a tape you put in your old tape cartridge machine, and it eats it up when it plays. You'll never be able to play it again. So those are factoids about mRNA. It's not just about this vaccine, it's about all mRNA, and it's obviously a universal process. Once produced within the body, this new protein antigen is recognized by the immune system as the virus, and your immune system then fights these little proteins that can't do anything to you, but it fights them off by making other people of its kind or things of its kind to fight when and if the real virus comes along. So what are the advantages of mRNA vaccines? Well, they're faster and cheaper to produce. They can be reproduced very quickly and actually really inexpensively too. So they do allow quick responses to large outbreaks and epidemics. That's why the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine came so quickly. In fact, right now, their ability to change it easily, and they actually can do it on a computer, believe it or not. That's working to our advantage on with these variants. They actually already have mRNA vaccines for COVID that have for instance, the South Africa variant in it, and that's going to be coming soon to a theater near you. And so that makes, and also in the fact that the way they're so simple, they're just this mRNA strand. They're highly effective, and you can see the all disease effective rate is in the mid-90s, which is outrageous and quite good. Excuse me. They're also safer. They're safer than traditional vaccines. They're not produced using infectious elements. They have nothing in them but some cholesterol and the mRNA strand. So they have no organic contaminants. They don't have parts of another organism used to grow it. Or it's not grown. It's just produced. It's made. It's made in the lab. So there's no organic contaminants. So it's a way of backwardly saying it's all organic, folks. It has no additives in it. There is one additive in it that is not of significance at all, but is the only one that could cause a problem and maybe has caused a problem in the past, and that's polyethylene glycol. And that sounds terrible. But polyethylene glycol is the stuff in Miralax. It's actually almost a plastic material that you don't absorb at all. Okay, it gets injected into your deltoid muscle, but you don't absorb it. It'll sit there. Now, of course, it's in microscopic amounts. And 1 in 1 million people can get an allergic reaction to it. Not every one of those 1 in 1 million have severe reactions to it, but it's 1 in 1 million. That's pretty good odds. For instance, other vaccines, the tetanus, let's pick on the tetanus vaccine. It's clearly higher than 1 in 1 million of an allergic potential to it. Here's the actual article in the New England Journal of Medicine. This is actually on the Moderna vaccine. Moderna did not take any federal money. So I'm sorry, this is on the Pfizer vaccine. They didn't take any federal money. But Moderna was funded by the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is headed by a guy by the name of Anthony Fauci, which you may have all heard of. Okay, just to round it out, you're not going to get, this group listening is not going to get the J&J. We didn't know this when we put this together for you. But the viral vector vaccines just use a virus that doesn't cause disease. It's a virus, adenovirus, which is very similar to a cold virus that induces a very hefty immune response. It's been studied for decades, and they easily design and produce it on a mass scale. And it works pretty much the same way. It allows the genetic material delivered by the vector to integrate into your cell, but not into your DNA, and helps you create antibodies. So we'll just kind of quickly go over that. Let's take a look at the trials. So people say, well, it came so fast, how do we really know? Well, you know, when some of the medicines we're using right now that were used quite a bit and that are very good medicines and make a big difference in people's lives have been studied in much less people. This has been a remarkable thing that happened last year. Pfizer had 43,500 folks from different international sites, including 30% in the United States. The age group was all ages over 16. Moderna is slightly smaller, but still extremely significant statistically. 37% racially and ethnically diverse, so we knew it works in all humans. 42% in the Moderna were high risk by age or comorbidities. And it was done with people over 18 years of age. The Johnson & Johnson, about 40,000 people, and you know, a similar thing. A little more international on the J&J, and that has that implication for the variant efficacy or effectiveness. That's significant. So let's talk about, and we can do some questions at the end, but let's talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to the hearts of a lot of people in the age group that are going to be taking this vaccine. Now, I know teachers are all ages, but this is a question we're asked a lot in our cohort here at work, here at the hospital. We have a lot of, obviously, women on our workforce because of nursing is still predominantly women, and there's a lot of young women, and they ask this question immediately: what about pregnancy? Well, you know, there's no data on any effects, good or bad, in pregnancy or any influence it would have on the ability to get pregnant. This is in the studies that were done previously. We won't really have data we can rely on in the scientific sense on the specific effects of these vaccines on women of childbearing age or the effects of their offspring for many, many, many years. But let me be clear. There would be no reason to assume that it would not work in pregnancy, that the vaccine would not be efficacious in pregnancy. And in fact, of the over 10 million people worldwide, it's tens of millions of people worldwide that have received the vaccine, a large cohort have been pregnant and have done particularly well. And it's not keeping people from getting pregnant, I can assure you that. As for unwanted, we can assure you from personal knowledge, as far as unwanted effects, there's no reason to suspect that this particular vaccine would cause harm. We can say that because we know its mechanism. There'd be no reason for this thing to do something rogue that anything else wouldn't do. It just doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way, and biological science doesn't work that way. There are advantages to the mRNA vaccines while you're pregnant, because it doesn't contain these additives and will cause less unwanted reactions. And the actual agent that promotes the immune response does not cross the placenta into the fetus. We know that for a fact. Now, here's the important part. Getting immunized is really important if an individual were to become pregnant. It's because the vaccine can help prevent infection and maternal complications. So complications for the mother. Having COVID is more likely to cause severe illness in pregnant women than women who are not pregnant. Pregnant women get sicker. Being immunized will decrease that particular individual woman's risk of being hospitalized and death from having COVID while she's pregnant, and also of having complications to the pregnancy. Because when this individual becomes sick, there easily can be complications to the pregnancy. You can therefore prevent fetal health problems due to COVID. Having COVID early in pregnancy probably increases the risk of fetal birth defects. We have no data to show that. It will also protect your baby after birth. The antibodies you develop will pass through the placenta, and if you're breastfeeding, into breast milk. And they help to prevent the baby from COVID after birth, because they really don't have any immunity after they're born. And of course, it also protects your family and your fellow workers and your community and your entire society by not being able to transmit the virus. And of course, that's very important. So there's a lot to unpack there. We can revisit any word we want to, or any phrase or anything, after Corinne talks for you for just a few minutes about some logistics on the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Duffy. I think you just need to mute yours. Thanks. So here's a summary of phase 2A with a few logistics pieces of information on there. We've had lots of questions about who within your school environment falls into phase 2A. It's definitely the teachers. It's definitely your paraprofessionals, your custodial staff, your food service staff, your substitute staff, as well as coaches. So if you have not previously included some of your consistent substitute teachers or your coaches on the list, please reach out to Chad, who is collecting the information as soon as possible. We're really working on trying to shore up what the final number for our clinic will be. So if you did not include those individuals and they wish to be vaccinated, you can add them to your list. For staff who, like coaches who may not have a particular pay stub, for example, maybe you have a coach who is coaching baseball or softball and the season hasn't started. And I know typically the coaches get, if it's a paid position, get that pay at the end of the season. You definitely just need to add them to your list. And if you have put them on your list, you as the principal or the superintendent or whoever is compiling that list are basically attesting to the fact that they meet the criteria for phase 2A. When you come to the clinic, there'll be some identifying information that you need to bring with you. You need to bring a valid driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, you should have a photo non-driver ID card, something that proves you're who you say you are. A passport will qualify as well. And you need to bring one of the following, and they're listed on here, either a payroll check, a payroll document, a school ID, or a letter on school letterhead that states that you work there. Your school IDs, I believe most of them have the year on them, but we'll be doing a cross-reference between what is presented to us by the people who present for vaccination to the list that was provided to us, just to make sure that the people who are showing up are truly within this group that we're vaccinating in a special clinic. Next slide. Okay, so some clinic logistics. We are going to do the clinic for you all on March 19th. You may have seen things online that say March 22nd is when you can start doing vaccines for phase 2A. We have set up this special clinic in an effort to streamline the process for all of you so that you don't have to go online and register and try to schedule an appointment and go through all of that. Our goal is to get our community vaccinated as quickly and efficiently as possible so that we can all return to a normal, more normal life than we've had in the last 12 months. So this is a closed clinic. So if you have friends who work in other school districts or, maybe in other parts of the state, please do not share this clinic date with them. We will not vaccinate anybody who is not on the list that is submitted by your principals and or superintendents. So please don't tell your friends. As Dr. Duffy said, we did learn early this week that we'll be provided Moderna vaccine by the state. Your second dose will be 28 days later, which is April 16th. At the same time, we'll do the exact same clinic from 2:30 to 7:30 on that day. On day one, you'll get an immunization card. Please bring that with you when you come back for your second dose. And you also still need to bring those proof of identification with you to your second appointment. The clinic is 100% drive-through. You will not need to get out of your vehicle. You will be greeted by a greeter. They'll verify you're who you say you are and that you're on our list. You'll then be screened by a clinical staff person who's going to go through some screening questions with you to make sure that you are eligible to receive the vaccine that day. Really, there's a couple of things that would prohibit you from being vaccinated on this particular day. One, if 10 days prior, so anytime between now and the 19th, you have a known exposure to a COVID positive person, which would then require you to be out on isolation. If you had a known exposure, you cannot be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine on that day. If you yourself test positive for COVID between now and then, you're not eligible to be vaccinated that day. If you have received any other vaccine within 14 days prior, or you're scheduled to receive another vaccine 14 days after, you won't be able to be vaccinated unless you're going to cancel that vaccine that's happening after the fact. And the priority of which vaccine, we're not going to decide that for you. You should reach out to whoever has scheduled that vaccination for you and work with your provider to determine what makes the most sense for you and your personal health. After you have received your vaccine, after you're screened, you'll then drive up. Another clinical staff person will come out. They're going to ask you your name and date of birth again, because we want to make sure that we have the right person. They will give you your immunization, and then they're going to give you instructions to drive into our observation period, where you'll stay in your car again for that observation period. Somebody will greet you in the observation area. You'll monitor, self-monitoring for 15 minutes. They'll check in with you periodically through that 15 minutes, and they'll instruct you that during that observation period, if you feel, if you're not feeling well, if you're starting to feel anything that is abnormal for you, we'll have you honk your horn, and then clinical staff will come over and address whatever symptoms you're having. Did you unmute?
It's the speaker. Okay.
And then once your 15 minutes are up, you're able to drive off. If you experience any symptoms immediately after your immunization, or you've had you've had severe symptoms after a previous immunization, we'll have you stay with us for 30 minutes. So just factor that into when you choose to come. We're not assigning you a particular time. Just come anytime between 2:30 and 7:30, but please, to be on the safe side, I would plan for 30 minutes observation after. That way you're not late for another appointment, because if you are having some side effects, we want to have you stay here. We, knock on wood, have not had anybody who's had any severe reactions to the vaccines. And we're, yeah, it's 1 in a million. We don't anticipate that happening, but just for planning purposes, I'd like to remind people of that. You, as Dr. Duffy alluded earlier, you are not considered fully immunized until 14 days after your second dose. So that would put you at April 30th is when you would be considered fully immunized. A couple of people have asked questions about travel. The state and CDC right now are continuing to discourage non-essential travel at this point in time. If you travel before 14 days after your second dose, when you're considered fully immunized, the travel guidance is that you self-quarantine for 10 days if you're traveling outside of New England. The only way to shorten that time period is to be tested on day 6, and then you can end your quarantine on day 7, provided you're feeling okay. I think that's all that I had as far as logistics. I'm just going to go over to the question somebody did ask about travel guidance. So I think I just addressed that, but if people have questions specific about travel, let me know. In the chat, can we carpool with our teaching team to the clinic? That's totally up to you. If you'd like to, that's fine. If we have an appointment set for later, how do we cancel it? If you have an appointment later, you need to go into VAMS or VMS, wherever you've scheduled that appointment, and you need to cancel that. We can't do that for you. So you should go in and do that. I'm going to come back to this next question because I'll turn that over to Dr. Duffy. The street address for the clinic is just before the hospital. So the hospital is on 600 St. Johnsbury Road. Just before the hospital, you'll see a street on the right-hand side. It's called Hilltop Road. And there's a giant green sign that says COVID vaccinations and testing. You'll turn right onto Hilltop Road and follow the signs down that road. And then you'll get to the greeter shed and they'll direct you into the clinic lanes. Let me just see if there's any other. Can we avoid a long wait by showing up later after the 2:30 start? You absolutely can. You can come anytime between 2:30 and 7:30. We'll probably plan to do our last vaccination around 7:30, mostly because it's going to start getting dark for us. Otherwise, we would go a little bit later. So, yep, certainly if you want to wait and come at 6 or 6:30, that's totally fine. You can arrive anytime during those hours. And then I'm going to turn over a couple of questions to Dr. Duffy. How long does this vaccine last?
We believe that it will last for many years. We believe also now that immunity from vaccine is superior to actual natural immunity in this case. Although if you've had the COVID disease and you get vaccinated later, if you fit all the right time frames, you have even more superior immunogenicity. But this is almost surely should last for years. Remember, a lot of people point to whether or not they're circulating antibodies, whether or not it'll be effective or not. What happens is you still have immunity if you don't have circulating antibodies. For instance, right now, I'm sure none of us have tetanus antibodies. But if we came in contact with tetanus, we would not get it, because what would happen was there are cells called T cells. She's got a non-science teachers out there and other personnel. Just gonna have to take my word for it. There are things called T cells and B cells that remember, and they will start making antibodies to it. They make the antibodies that are incredibly effective. Also, we may, because frankly, it may not seem like it to you guys, but you're early adopters in a sense. Corinne and I are way early adopters. We've had the vaccine for quite a while. For us that received it early, at least the two mRNA types, we may need a booster in the fall, or at least we think we might need one in the fall. And that we'll do that because of the variants, not because your immunity will wane. So long story to say, we think for quite a while, and this has been proven to be a highly effective way not to get COVID. Again, we vaccinated tens of millions of people in the world. I mean, we're up over 10 million in the United States. And I don't know of any cases of anyone who was sick enough to notice that they got infected with COVID after being fully vaccinated. Hopefully we can say that for a long time.
Another question, is there any reason why one should not have an operation 1 week after the second shot?
Well, it kind of depends what the operation is, but I would say in general, no, it should make no difference.
Is the Stelara shot considered a vaccine?
What is Stelara? It's a biologic, right? Yeah, so it's a biologic. I think you need to stay away from it. So talk to your prescriber about that. I've actually come across this, not so much with Stelara. Somebody had one or the other, and these biologics are tremendous medications that are actually widely used because a lot of people have autoimmune diseases like psoriatic arthritis and stuff like that, rheumatoid arthritis, or gastrointestinal disease. But in any case, I would talk to the prescriber, and I think you need just a little rest of about 6 weeks. But I would talk to the prescriber. It might be as high as 90 days, depending on the product. But if you're asking, I just had it, that's a different story. I think you're going to need to have a little holiday between having the biologic and getting vaccinated. And I hope the question is, but talk to the provider. They are very knowledgeable about their particular things that they utilize in their practice.
A couple of questions here I can answer.
Where is it?
Okay, a couple of more logistics questions that I'll tackle as we go through these. Do you recommend that everyone arrive as close as 2:30 as possible? I think if everybody plans to arrive at 2:30, the wait could be long. We will have 2 lanes going behind the hospital, and just on the access road. I think that will accommodate about 30 to 40 cars. So I think it's better if people spread out a little bit. Otherwise, you could have a little bit of a wait.
I've got it up. I can do some of them. Yeah, can we get the vaccine at a later date if we've had another vaccine? We absolutely will work with you.
Yep.
I would not fret about that.
No.
You're just not going to get it as fast as you want, which I can understand.
Yeah.
I wanted to, but it'll be fine. You'll get it.
Yep. I've heard it's helpful to hydrate before and after the vaccine periods. Is this helpful? Also, is Tylenol or ibuprofen recommended before or after?
It's never a bad idea to be hydrated. We all walk around relatively dehydrated, busy people. So I would do that. Tylenol is absolutely fine. You don't really need to do it just before you get the vaccine. I think that you're going to get vaccinated later in the day. I just think before you go to bed at night is fine. If you like ibuprofen, that's fine too, if it's okay for you to take that. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, if you wake up with symptoms, which you will, mm-hmm. You're going to have a sore arm. Although, I guess 20% don't, but most vaccines, we don't have this, you don't get anything. Just take it in the morning when you get up. The second dose, you may get some too, so you're going to anticipate that as well. Some people don't get much out of the second dose. No, I got nothing. I got 0. I did not even get a sore arm from the second one, but I'm old. So.
Yeah. I was just going to say, anecdotally, we have seen less side effects after the second dose with people who are over the age of 55. People under the age of 55 seem to have more side effects. Again, this is purely anecdotal, just based on what we've seen with our employees and talking to patients. So, don't hold me to that. But definitely, some questions have been asked about, should we pre-medicate like we used to pre-medicate, or some people still pre-medicate their kids before immunizations. Dr. Chan in our conversations has really said, wait and medicate the symptoms that you have, because he's always going to err on the side of, why take medication if you don't need it? Wait until you have a symptom to address. So if a coach has a game and may not be able to get there on the 16th, is there an alternative for them? There certainly is. We can kind of work with them. I would really encourage everybody to do your best. I would like the exception to be people that, we need to work with and make different arrangements for. We're probably going to be vaccinating between 300 and 400 people. So I can't have, 250 of the 300 people have some extenuating circumstance and need vaccine on a different day. So I would ask, people to really do their best to commit to these 2 days. And it should be the exception, that there's an issue and we need to try to reschedule for second dose. Has this vaccine been modified for the variants?
Not yet, no. These are the originals.
Thank you for the Friday date. As a boarding school, we work weekends too. Any guidance on mass vaccination of staff and the possibility of side effects? I'll take that one. We could Cora, split up your staff and do some people, during the week, during our regular clinic. We just wouldn't be able to do them before the 19th. So you and I can connect and talk about, what that looks like. We did have some days where we vaccinated, close to 100 of our employees, and had several people who were out the next day or two with not feeling well after second dose. So we can work with you, since your situation is a little bit different than the schools that are in session Monday through Friday. This is being recorded and we will get it out to all of you, and we will send the PowerPoint presentation as well. I think that's all of the. There's another question here about travel and whether there's any conversation about travel opening up. What have you heard, Dr. Duffy?
It's just that I don't want to sound like Mr. Insider, because I'm not, but I have contacts, and it should come relatively soon. Let me just tell you that. I think that travel for fully vaccinated individuals will be loosened up officially loosened up within a month or two, I would think. I think that just, to go off script a little bit, I think that have hope, because we're very likely by June to have herd immunity in this country. And then after that, all restrictions, the pandemic will be over. And, all those fancy governors' mandates and orders and federal mandates and orders will fade away. Now, some of those we've learned to love here, but, the stuff like travel and wearing a mask in public, that's all likely to go away. When, I don't really know, but this is not going to be forever, and it's not going to be till next September, next November, barring, anything else happening, right? Because anything can happen, as we've learned back a year ago, anything can happen. But I hear from people that are close to it that there's already been some kind of lobbying within the agency, the CDC, to loosen that up at this point. And I think it should be coming very soon.
Mhm. Yeah, but at this point in time, they have not changed the guidance if you're not fully immunized, and that's 14 days after your second dose. So, and then I would also, I know some of the schools have their own policies around travel, like we have our own policy here for our employees. So I would also refer you back to, your own school or your district and what their guidance around travel is as well. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Is there anybody that wants to come off mute and ask questions?
Yeah, let's do that if you want. It's a little bit easier sometimes to just speak up. Everybody seems satisfied.
Everybody seems satisfied. So we will get the recording of this off to you, as well as the PowerPoint, so that if there are staff, you can listen to it again, or if there were staff that were unable to attend today, they can refer to this.
Corinne, I just want to thank you so much for making this so easy for all of us.
There you go, Kristen.
We really appreciate it.
I can't hear
Kristen.
Roberts.
Oh,
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, you got to put one speaker on. Put yours on.
um,
We turned our
no,
speakers off.
mine's on.
Hold on. We got to hold on for a second.
Yeah,
It's okay.
still not able to hear you, Kristen.
It's okay.
Kristen, the rest of us can hear you.
Okay. I'll type it to her. No worries.
Did we mute everybody?
No, it says she's off mute, but I think she's going to type it into the chat, maybe.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, she's just saying thank you so much for making this so easy for us. Okay,
Now, we got to take care of each other. That's our theory here.
exactly.
So we mean it. It's not just embellishing. We really mean it, sincere. You guys are a pillar of the community. You're very, obviously an important component. And we got to keep you guys healthy and to keep the kids healthy, and just so we can get on with our lives.
Feel free between now and then, if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to me. I think many of you have my email address. I know the school nurses in each of your schools do. So you can contact me directly or through your school nurse, and we'll get your questions answered. Otherwise, we will see you on March 19th.
All right. Take
Okay,
care,
and then
everybody.
one last question. Should you say 10 or 14 days to quarantine after the second dose? So I think you're asking after travel. So the current state guidance is that you self-quarantine 10 days if you're traveling outside of New England once you return. And you're not considered fully immunized until 14 days after your second dose.
What's the total? I never added them up. What's the total number of days from the first vaccine or from Moderna? It's
56.
56 days. Yeah, you gotta.
No, that's wrong. 46.
So it's
6 weeks.
It's 20.
42.
42 days. It's 6 weeks.
It's late in the day.
42 days before you are fully immunized. In a way, that's, the Moderna is the slowest way to get there, but Corinne and I had Moderna, and I couldn't be happier with it in terms of the side effect profile, and trust me, it's effective.
Yep. Okay.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you all.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.